I'll be coming into Indy on the 5th of July to, meet with Kevin and Chad, sign my contract, talk some more about staff. We've got some important draft workouts, and we'll kind of go from there. This job interested me the most because of the strong level of interest from Herb, Kevin, and Chad. I really like the roster. I mean, this is my kind of team, as I look at the roster, and as I've talked to all these guys, I really have an even greater feeling that it's the kind of group of guys that I will have a blast working with. And so, strong mutual interest, and things came together pretty quickly. Domas Sabonis has been was an all-star this year. I think he's the guy that people look at as sort of the main guy, but I really feel like this is a team. When you're talking about the best players, it's a strength in numbers type of situation, and I think that there has to be a certain kind of balance. As I mentioned, when we were developing that team in Detroit for a couple of years, the second year we had Billups, Hamilton, Ben Wallace, we had Corliss Williamson, we had, Tayshaun Prince was a young player who was starting to play more. And, that group went on to make a couple of moves. They eventually traded for Rasheed Wallace, which got them over the top, and they were able to win a championship with that kind of strength in numbers core group of high level players. You look at, I look at Malcolm Brogdon, I look at Karis LeVert. TJ Warren didn't even play last year. I think he played 3 games last year. Miles Turner is the best rim protector in the game, statistically. And, Domas is, a guy that's established that he can play the game at different levels. He can score at the rim. He drives it. His 3-point shooting is something that's become a positive factor. And he gets to the free throw line and he can pass it, and so, and I love McConnell as a player. I think he just brings a certain tenacity and a certain energy to the game, Lamb, McDermott, all these guys. And so I just, I feel like, yes, identifying who the guys are and where the ball's going to go in crunch time is important. Role identification is huge. Role acceptance is bigger, and we've got to do a great job of communicating as a coaching staff, exactly what we need, and exactly, what it's going to take for us to be successful. My goal with this group is to have a situation and develop a feeling in the locker room and a feeling on the floor where we take great joy in helping each other get great shots on the offensive end, and we take great joy in helping each other defensively, trying to do well there. So that's how I see it. The roster is exciting. The guys here are all under good contracts. From what I hear from Kevin and Chad, there's great interest in all of our guys. But I think right now, the priority is to, get the new staff in here, work toward, good health as much as we can. Try to get McConnell and McDermott re-signed if we can do that, and kind of move forward from there. It was so fortunate, that my first 2 times here, as an assistant working with Larry, it was Mark Jackson, Reggie Miller, it was Smits and the Davis brothers. Jalen Rose developed into a great scorer and a max player. Travis Best, those guys. We got to the conference finals, I think all 3 years, and made the finals 1 year. The experience of a team going to a team at that time that a lot of people thought needed to be broken up. Larry Brown had done a great job, but he was leaving. People thought that, the roster with, with Reggie and the Davises and Rick and those guys, it kind of, Derek McKee had just kind of run its course. And then Larry Bird came in, and he just gave that team new life and new confidence. And he did it in a way that was very simple. He talked about the things that were necessary for team success. We made the trade for Chris Mullin that year, which was which added another element that we needed. And it went from a team that people had written off to a team that was now, contending for the Eastern Conference championship, and took Jordan's last team in Chicago to Game 7. And so we got to do the same things here. We've got to lay this out in a way that makes sense to these guys. We got to sell them. I've got to sell them on making sacrifices and having each other's back, and doing the hard things. Just the basic things. Transition defense. Running back every time. It's the beginning of your defense. Little things like free throw block, all that stuff. We'll get into all that stuff. But that's what I learned with that group. And then, when I came back and we had Jermaine and Ron Artest, and Reggie was still there. We had Steve Jackson. We had a very talented team. We had a good run the first year. The second year, we had the situation in Detroit with the Palace. And even though we went through that difficult situation, we came out of that year with 44 wins, and we won in the first round and got to the second round. And so a lot of positives came out of it. And one thing I've learned in coaching is that you always have a plan for adversity. And when things get tough, you focus on what you have and not what you don't have. You always talk about having that mental edge, to create small edges and make sure you can do those things when things are tough. And, all those things that I've learned really helped me and helped our teams in Dallas. And, I feel very strongly that they'll help us here as well. I look at those two guys, and, I think there's ways that we can stagger them in the lineup with the rotation, so that they can play together some, but that they can also, one play without the other. And I think there are some ways we can work to enhance, their individual games and help them mesh with other guys on the floor. I've talked to both guys about that. They both like playing together, and they were both very open to doing some of these different kinds of things and talking about them and putting them in play. Myles is an elite rim protector. That's such an important part of the game if you're going to try to be a better team defensively. And as I mentioned earlier, Domas can just do so many things. And I think both of those guys shoot the three with a level of efficiency. I just both of them being 25 years old, I think there's things we can do to help them get better, at the 3-point line and beyond, because the spacing in the game now isn't just at the 3-point line. As you're seeing, guys are spotting up and taking shots 2, 3, 4 feet behind the line to create wider gaps and make it harder to defend. So the short answer is I really like both guys. When my teams have played them over the last few years, we always felt like it was a physical beating that we were taking with them, both defensively and offensively. Because Domas is a guy that punishes you physically, when you're trying to guard him, on the inside, and when you're trying to guard him off the dribble and things like that. So I'm looking forward, to the challenge of making it work at the highest possible level with those two guys. One of the things that intrigues me about this team is that it doesn't appear that we have a lot of guys that are really fixated on it, and that could be a positive thing for us. But social media is become very important for individual teams. When I was in Dallas, we went to the bubble last year. We allowed our social media guy to come into every practice and to give access to our fans because they'd waited so many months for the hiatus. And so, we'll figure out what the right dose of that is. But that's another way that the game has changed so much. The style of play, is ever evolving. And now, as I just mentioned, the big difference now is the 5 men, are not only rollers and rim threats on lobs and stuff. These guys are now making, 27, 28, 29, 30-foot shots and driving the ball. And so we want to get our guys as versed as possible in doing those things offensively. But then you've got to work at how you're going to defend that stuff. And so it's really made defense such a challenging thing. But even though the scores are higher, the pace is faster, more shots are going in, the better defensive teams are still going to have an advantage. And so that's one reason that we're really going to work hard at the defensive end to, figure out what our best base coverage is, have a great transition defense, and be a good defensive rebounding team. My development as a coach has been so greatly shaped in Indiana, and then a 13-year run with Dallas with a lot of different types of rosters has been a real fertile environment, to try to continue to develop coaching chops. So, but look, anytime you have the opportunity to leave one great franchise and join another, or I should say rejoin another, it's very, very special. And I've had a lot of conversations with Kevin and Chad over the last several days, and a few obviously leading up to the deal being agreed upon. And we're excited. There's just a lot of positive things about this situation. And again, I'll say this again. I think health and understanding our health situation and nurturing, our players through their health situations is going to be super key to this thing. The conventional post up, the 90s post up of throwing it in, spotting up, backing in, grinding. That play has become a difficult play in our league. There are a few players that are good at it. There are some guards that are very good at it. Luka Doncic is a really effective post player because of his strength and his skill set. You've got Anthony Davis, you've got LeBron, you've got a few others. Domas is a guy that's effective in the paint. I think there's ways that we can get Myles to be more impactful in the paint, with making him a rim threat on lobs, ducking him in, doing those kinds of things. But there's a real balance these days between the post game and the spacing game. And with this group, we're going to really have to work to strike the correct balance. And I think Domas is one of the guys in this league that is an effective post player. And so we want to make sure we take advantage of that. I've loved the interactions that I've had with Kevin and Chad so far. It feels like we all see the game in a very similar way. Each team's different with how the front office and the management team interacts with the head coach. In Dallas, it was wide ranging. At times I would be very involved in deals. Other times deals would be made, sometimes they were cap related or something like that. And I always just trusted that Mark and Donnie were doing the right things, and I take whatever they gave me and do the best that I could with it. Here, I think, they're very interested in knowing my views of the game and my views of the roster and so on and so forth. And I've really enjoyed the conversations. They've been very detailed. These guys are extremely organized. They've got it covered both from a personnel side and an analytics side, which you have to have in this day and age. So, I'm just really looking forward to the relationship. But I view myself as a coach. I do not, have any designs or any interest on being a front office person at this stage of my career. But I want to work effectively with these guys and work effectively with Herb, so that we can make, the correct decisions as we move forward. As I've spoken to all the players here, I'm doing a lot of listening. It's important for me to understand how these guys see the game. And the relationships that you build, are really the greatest source of fulfillment in coaching. And so I'm really looking forward to getting with these guys in person. I've done some FaceTime stuff with a couple of the guys as they've done workouts because I just can't be on site at the present time. But I really feel like you come to a new situation, you've got to listen, you've got to learn, you've got to talk about things you believe are important. But there's got to be a give and take. And relationships develop over time. Respect is earned in drops, and trust is earned in drops. And in coaching, you learn that early on. Now, I gotta be careful because I'm a coach, not a trainer or a PT or a doctor. But in Dallas, over my last 13 years there, one of the really important things that we did on a day-to-day basis that I did was talk to my trainer, Casey Smith. And we talked about, how we were going to manage minutes, and how we're going to play guys, what guys could tolerate. He had a real good feel for the big picture and an intimate knowledge of each player's individual health situation. And so, sometimes it comes down to, the amount of how long a stretches guys play. If a guy has a significant injury history and you play him the first 12 minutes of each game, that's tough. A guy, you really burn a guy out. And as a player gets more fatigued, injury becomes more probable. And so, there are, certain things about managing the rotation, that you can do to help guys stay fresh over the course of the season. One of the things we did with Dirk Nowitzki, going into the year we won the championship, we started playing him in 3 stretches per half. And so he would start, play 6 minutes, come out for probably 3, go back in with a second unit. And you get a guy like that goes in with a second unit for 6 or 7 minutes. That really strengthens the guys around him, comes out for 3 minutes, and then goes back in for the last 4, whatever the numbers add up. Well, in that scenario, playing those 6 or 7 minute stretches, he never gets fully gassed. And you allow, an all-time great player to enhance the guys around him. In that particular season, it really helped keep his energy level up. And then we got into a long playoff run, and we continued with it. So that's an example of how you can help manage these kinds of situations. I know Josh Corbeil is, at the cutting edge of everything having to do with player health and physical therapy and those kinds of things. And so we've had some discussions. We'll have more as we kind of move forward. And once we get closer to the season and, start looking at exhibition games and regular season games, this is one of the sciences of coaching now. It's a little bit like, the world of television access. One of the job descriptions of being a coach in the NBA now is, you've got to be ready to be in front of the camera. You got to be ready to have your pregame and halftime talks to the team, filmed and be on TV. And then your huddles, when you're on national TV games, you're going to be on TV. It wasn't like this 10, 12 years ago when or 15 or 19 years ago when I got into this. And so things are evolving, but When you talk about health, that's the best example that I can give you that had to do with a franchise caliber player. Great communicators, great energy, great staff chemistry, and people that have a natural way of communicating the message. Not only the message of the coaching staff, but the message of the franchise. Who are we? I think the identity of a team is a super important thing to establish, and it starts with the head coach and starts with the president. As you identify who you want to be as a franchise, and then the coaching staff, and then you want to get to a point where the players are sending that message out as well. So that's how I view that. Well, I've done that a couple of times, and it was I always had good experiences when I did it, but when an opportunity like this comes up, you listen, and then as we both have mentioned, the mutual interest was strong, and things developed from there. As the president of the Coaches Association, I work with David Fogel, who's the executive director. We're always talking to the league. We're talking to Orr Stewart, who now is the director of HR, about a diverse hiring process. It's something that we've gone on record to talk about, and every situation is different. One thing that we always acknowledge is a team can hire who they want to. That's their prerogative. But if you're asking me, in general, yeah, we always are in favor of a wide-ranging and diverse hiring process. Donnie Walsh in particular was a very special person to me. He was a guy that helped guide me from being an assistant coach that was gaining a lot of responsibility when I came in with Larry to my quest to become a head coach. He was a guy that always took extra time, to talk to me about things that I needed to do better, that I needed to develop better. I consider Donnie Walsh one of the very, very special people that I've ever been around in this business, because of how much he loves the game, how much he cares for the people that have worked under him, and how much he did to help create opportunities for me to succeed. There was one time when I first got here as an assistant, we sat in his office, and I was the offensive guy, and we'd had a couple of tough situations at the end of games, and we talked about end of game situations, and he gave me some really good ideas of things, and I got better. Unless you've won a championship, I think there's always unfinished business. And look, we're a small market team. We're a humble organization. I say we because now I'm a part of this organization again. But we've got to think big, and we've got to be proactive. We've got to be very smart in everything that we do. Creating small edges is something that you don't just do on the court. You find ways to do it, in the front office, and in the community. Our activity in the community is very important as well. And I'll get with the people that deal with those kinds of things and kind of see what's what in Indy these days. But there's always things to be done. This past year, I learned an amazing amount, about social justice. I got involved in Dallas in some things having to do with policing policies and things like that. I'm going to look into those things in Indianapolis and see if there's things that I can get involved with that might help. But there's a lot going on with an NBA franchise. and the head coach has to be a leader. The guy in Kevin's position has to be a leader. And when you lead, effective leadership means that when things are going well, the attention focuses on the players. They're the ones that are on the floor. They're the ones that are getting the job done. And when you hit tough times, that's when the head coach has to step up and make sure that you give the right direction, you protect the players. And again, when you hit adversity, you've got to focus on the things that you have and not the things that you don't have. I've been through a lot of those situations. You never look forward to them necessarily, but there's always a seed of opportunity there, and we'll always look to find that opportunity. That memory is bittersweet for sure. It's something that it's a source of emotion, really, because of everything that happened that year. And as I mentioned before, the fact that after getting a lot of guys suspended, Ronnie was suspended for the entire season. Steve was out for 30 games. Jermaine was suspended, I think 25, but then they shortened it to 15. And then there may have been one other one. The way that group stuck together and found a way to turn, and Reggie was hurt at the beginning of the season too, and found a way to turn it into a positive was one of the great examples of resourcefulness, team resourcefulness that I've ever seen in sport and that I've ever been involved with. But I think we all learned something, that year about how delicate, expectations are, how tenuous things can be. The raw power of emotions and how when they go the wrong way, it can change history. And so I take all of that, I take great stock in it. It's helped teach me a lot of things about myself and about what team is and the values that I believe are important to team building and to an organization. And look, you don't experience growth without really incredible challenges. And so I've had my share of growth over the years, and I hope to use that wisdom, to help create the best possible situation again here in Indiana. We had a practice. It was in between games 3 and games 4 of the playoff series. We were playing against Utah at the time, and I went over to Arvydas's house. He had missed practice because of the birth, and I had gone over to congratulate him. And Arvydas had always been a guy who was very, very reserved, very, didn't say a whole lot, but he was so emotionally happy that day. He gave me a big bear hug. We had a few drinks, and then he even showed me a video of the birth, which may have been a little bit too much information at the time. But I've always felt a connection with Domas because of that experience. And it's amazing how time flies.